Hey everyone, in this video, let's compare Gemini with ChatGPT. In order to do so, we're going to go ahead and start off here with Gemini, which can be found at gemini.google.com. And if you're unfamiliar with Gemini, then this is what you can expect when you get here. You have your main window where you can begin to talk to Gemini. And the first thing I want to ask Gemini is whether Gemini has a memory of our different conversations. So let's go ahead and ask Gemini, do you have a memory of our different conversations? And we'll just let Gemini respond. And here you go. I do not have a memory of past conversations. Each conversation we have starts fresh. While I can access and process information from the real world through Google search, my responses are generated in the moment and are not stored or retained. So that already is one thing that I'm going to point at as a difference between Gemini and ChatGPT. That's kind of a big deal for me. It depends on you and what you find important, but personally, I like the fact that ChatGPT maintains a memory of my conversations, because what that means is that it offers more intuitive, personalized responses. So if I want Gemini to be able to recall something that we talked about before, then I have to add that information in to our discussion each time. So that's something that if you want to have a document that you have on the side, and I mean, you can always refer back to your previous conversations here on the left-hand side. You can see all of your conversations that are saved there. So, I mean, they are saved in that regard. But the thing is that your conversation from one conversation to the next, there's not a memory that carries over. So if I refer to something in one conversation over here, then it's not going to necessarily carry over into this conversation over here. Whereas with ChatGPT, it does do that. Now, with ChatGPT, it is somewhat limited, especially if you're using the free version. If you are using the premium version of ChatGPT, then it has more memory that it can pull from, which means more intuitive, personalized responses, and it gets confused less, because sometimes ChatGPT does get confused, or it'll forget things. If you're talking to it about some kind of a topic or something like that, then sometimes you have to remind it, hey, we talked about this over here. And then oftentimes ChatGPT will go, oh yeah, I remember that now. So it could be a little bit forgetful, you might say. The other thing here, the main, I would say, controversy that has arisen when it comes to different chatbots is the philosophy behind the creation of the model. And the Gemini has famously within the last 6 months, you may have heard that Gemini was getting some strange responses when being asked about certain things, like U.S. presidents, for example. You might have picked up on that. If you don't, you can go ahead and search that and take a look at that. And that's an example of the controversy behind the philosophy that governs the individuals who create the chatbot. Are they injecting a bias into the way that they create their models? And is that affecting the responses that the chatbot gives you? And this has also been a controversy with, for example, DeepSeek, which has some really interesting responses. I've used DeepSeek and I really find a lot of the responses quite interesting. And I like the way that DeepSeek, for example, will give you kind of a little summary of how it is that it is analyzing your questions, your queries, your comments. It'll give you a sort of breakdown, and that's interesting to be able to follow that thought process. That's one of the things that stands out with DeepSeek. Whereas with Gemini, I believe the idea is that it's essentially pulling from the Google search engine. And so, you are going to get some pretty good responses from that. But the problem is that there have been some issues in the past with Gemini just outright lying about certain things because of the way that it is programmed. And that's something that's a controversy across every different chatbot right now. And ChatGPT is no different. It certainly does have its strange responses sometimes. But one of the things that I find with many chatbots is that you can reason with them. You can talk to them and kind of work through certain things. And oftentimes the chatbot will acknowledge your questions, your criticisms, and it will retrain itself to some degree. And I would say that ChatGPT, at least in my experience, is more intuitive about that and does respond to you. And again, because it maintains a memory of your conversations, it will provide responses that are more tailored to your past questions and criticisms, etc. So that to me is one of the reasons that ChatGPT still stands apart. There are other models that do have very intuitive responses. I do believe that Claude is famously very good as well. And as I said, I do really like a lot of the responses that I get from DeepSeek, but you could do a little bit of research on DeepSeek and you can find that there is some controversy with how it is that DeepSeek responds to certain questions. And in that, you can see the bias that governs the creator of the model, or the creators of the model. And so that is a controversy when it comes to chatbots and how they function. Let's go ahead and take a look at ChatGPT, and you could see that when you compare the two of them, they really are quite similar. I just need to log in here really quick with the ChatGPT, and we'll just go ahead and continue. And once we've done that, then we can compare them. So you can see that they really are quite similar. We have all of our past chats over here, and you can see that Gemini is setting things up quite similarly. Let's go ahead and take a look at our upgrade options. You can see that with ChatGPT, you can upgrade for about $20 a month. You can get the ChatGPT Plus. With Gemini, let's go ahead and take a look at Gemini Advanced. And we can see that with Gemini, we're looking at about $27 Canadian. So it's $20 US if we're looking over at ChatGPT. And then with Gemini, we are looking at about $27. So I'm guessing when it comes to US, it's probably going to be around $20, but that is something that you might want to take into consideration when choosing one or the other. But for my money at this point, I would say that I still enjoy what ChatGPT has to offer. There are other bots that I do find interesting for various reasons, but for the most part, I've invested a fair amount of time in ChatGPT, and I'm not that interested in moving outside of that ecosystem. There are other reasons to go elsewhere for a variety of reasons, like Grok with X, for example. The interesting thing about Grok is that it pulls from the from X itself. So anything that is being discussed on X is going to be reflected in the responses that you get from Grok. So you're really getting some up-to-date responses, whereas there's a bit of a delay with ChatGPT. Sometimes ChatGPT is about a month off from current events, or a couple weeks thereabout. And so if ChatGPT is not aware of a specific event, then sometimes you have to actually let it know, hey, this thing just happened, and ChatGPT will respond accordingly. But that's one. The thing about, though, with Grok is that Grok does not save your conversations. So every time you have a conversation with Grok, it's always starting from scratch, and that's the same thing with Gemini. And that's something to take into consideration why you might want to use one or the other. So we'll go ahead and leave it at that. If you found this video helpful, please leave us a comment and like and subscribe for more helpful tips.